Snowstorm coming through, y'all. Power might go out. I got water bottles. I even got like a 5-10 gallon jug full of water. I got like 5 gallons of water. It's important to have a generator. You could just get some gas and then crank up the generator, and then that can give you some power for a little while. So it's important to get one of those. Like, they're not very expensive. You can get one for like what, 4 or 500. Some some of them might be even 300. Uh, you could get one used. But it's important to have one. I put the I put a coat on the cat. He's been asleep. I got the dog with a handkerchief on, and I gave him one of my tank tops. Tied it on the back. It's ice. It is raining ice. Sleet. Man, I can only imagine how people have to dress like up north where it's like negative 15 degrees. Like, what do y'all do? Do y'all wear like 3 socks, 5 underwears, like 5 underwears on top, like 5 shirts, like 2 jackets, like gloves. You have to have gloves. The news is crazy. It's been crazy. I think it's been crazy for a long time. I don't know if it's ever gonna stop being crazy. It's always something crazy, and I feel like the left and the right should stop being so far left and so far right. They say that democracies don't last past 250 years, so like America is the longest lasting. I don't know about that. I mean, how is it in Europe? Like, how long have y'all had democracies in Europe? Because I think it is too far left, too far right. And then in France, people have like they have unions in France, so when they protest, when they go on strike, it actually does something. But there's no unions in America for a long time now. They kind of took that off a long time ago. Uh, I heard that like 2/3 of America used to be unionized or something, or was it 1/3? But now it's like 2% or something. I don't know. And it just seems like is billionaires. It's the billionaire class type stuff. That's really supporting going one way or the other. The news is crazy. It was another shooting and somebody was resisting arrest or something. There's another shooting in Minnesota or something. Minneapolis. And people are protesting again. It's dangerous to fight back. Even if they are in the wrong or something, you know, like don't fight back. They do tear gas, they do pepper spray. The snow, the ice storm has traffic going like 30 miles per hour on the interstates. People tend to lose control like on bridges. There's black ice. If it's higher elevation, like if it's raised higher. I got some old mud tires. I need to get some replacement tires because when tires get worn out, man, it's like super slippery. They're all dry rotted and cracked. One of them was completely dry rotted. I turned around in a ditch and it got all warped. I thought it was a ball joint or something. The bushings up under there. Turns out it was the tire. Tire was like warped, causing a lot of vibration. So I took it off. Aired up the spare tire, and apparently it's not good to have a spare tire on the front. It'd be better to put it on the back. And then if you have an all-wheel drive, that'll break the gears. If there's if there's an imbalance of the size of the tires, yeah, it probably wouldn't be good to put it in the back either because of the gear. It's so crazy. Y'all stay warm out there. Y'all stay warm. Leave the water dripping. I think in some places where they don't cut off the water, they don't turn it off, like it'll still break, like on down the line. So it's better to leave it dripping.
Okay, I've got new news now. The police chief, the Minnesota police chief, has told the Minneapolis Star Tribune that the person who was shot has died. Another officer involved shooting, federal agent shooting in Minneapolis, in which someone has died. We do not know what led to that shooting. We did show you video, which I will show you again in a few moments. It's just we have a pretty dynamic situation here, so I want to just stay on it. You've got federal officers and protesters facing off. The federal officers, you can see various images of them. Some of them have long guns. Many of those long guns that you saw being shot are canister weapons. In other words, they've got tear gas in them or flashbangs. You can see pepper spray. Okay, now police are moving toward the crowd. That's the weapon I'm describing. That's a canister of some sort. Typically it's tear gas. You can see there's a lot of tear gas in the environment right now. The federal officers have now all put on masks. A little while ago, just a few of them had masks on. Now they're all masked. Watch this one here, preparing to fire a canister. You can fire one canister out of those weapons at a time, then you have to reload. So you'll notice that when they shoot them, they immediately reload. It's a windy day, so the gas is blowing back on the officers, but they are all masked. So they're unaffected by it. There is a tape, and generally speaking, in a crowd control or law enforcement situation, the tape is the barrier beyond which you're not supposed to go. But now we've seen the federal officers crossing the tape and pushing people further than that, which is generally speaking not an infringement on the law if you're not interfering with an enforcement operation. We don't know what happened here. We do have video, and again, I will show it to you. It is terribly graphic, in which you see some sort of a scuffle involving federal officers and someone, and then you hear multiple shots. You can see it. Someone has been shot. That person who has been shot, according to the Minneapolis police chief, has died. So this is the second time now in a few weeks in which someone has been shot involving federal officers. Once again, these federal officers that you see in front of you, you can generally tell they're federal officers because these days the proof is in the negative. They don't have badges to indicate who they are. You saw people holding up their cameras and recording and asking these people, what's your name and badge number, and not getting a response. There you go. That's a tear gas canister that was fired. Most of these officers, this is a tear gas gun. The man with his gun up, that is not a tear gas weapon. That is a live fire weapon. We have not seen that used this morning. Those generally have bullets in them. Generally speaking, this guy on the left has a live fire weapon. He's pointing it downward. The other one is pointing it upward. The ones you're seeing, the short-nosed weapons, are for flashbang grenades or for tear gas. You can see an officer throwing a grenade there. then you hear it explode. So you saw him throw it, you saw it explode. That is meant to disorient protesters. The bang is very, very loud. The flash is very, very bright. You generally can't look at it. So you've got to sort of get out of the vicinity. Your hearing is usually disrupted for a little while. So the situation between the protesters and the federal officers seems to have settled for the moment, but as you can see, this continues to be a dynamic situation. The protesters were a little out of the shot at this point. Alex Tabbitt was around some of them. They've taken these dumpsters and garbage bins, turned them on their side to sort of impede the movement of the federal officers. There is a local police presence on the scene. It's just not on this camera, so we can't see them. We saw them on Alex Tabbitt's camera. Those are, we believe, Minneapolis police or Minnesota State Police. They are properly uniformed, as we would like our police to be. These people who are not properly uniformed are probably CBP and ICE. Some of them have badges on that suggest they're CBP, but you'll notice, unlike most police, they're not wearing identifying features. Alex Tabbitt is very, very close to the scene. He's just at a different angle. Alex, since you started telling us that we were hearing grenades, we saw a lot more kinetic activity, a lot more tear gas. We've seen flashbangs. What's happening where you are?
That's absolutely right. We can hear them very nearby the vicinity. What's happening over here on this side of the scene, Cole, if you could come along here, is protesters are chanting expletive ICE. They're saying, "We keep us safe." They've made, as we noted, a barrier of trash cans. There's a mattress to kind of separate the demonstrators from the scene of the crime. You can really smell the irritants in the air, even though it happened on the other side of the scene here. Oh, you just heard another flashbang. It's over there, Color, if you want to show. But you can see the smoke right now in the air. It looks like there's some sort of clash between the federal agents and the demonstrators happening over there. Looks like some people are heading towards that smoke. And then if you look on the other side as well here, Allie, there's even more dumpsters, even more barricades as protesters gear up to be here for a long time, to voice their displeasure, to voice their frustration after yet another person has been shot and killed by a federal agent. We're going to move back, Allie, because it is really picking up the amount.
Yeah, I want you to stay, you and your crew to stay safe. You're talking about these irritants. There is some wind in the air. We know that there are, we saw canisters of pepper spray. The shooting can be tear gas or pepper balls. What are you sensing? Are you feeling? You say you can smell it. Now people are moving towards you pretty fast. What's going on there?
Yeah, as you can see, there's a huge plume of smoke towards our right. So it's oh wow.
You're feeling it. That sounds like pepper to me. Yeah.
People are starting. Yeah, people are starting to move quite quickly out of the scene because it's getting quite uncomfortable. So I want to make sure our team is all safe here. But yeah, it's certainly escalated. I mean, now if you want to, and it completely engulfed in smoke, in chemical irritant. You can feel it in your throat, you can feel it in your eyes, and people who were of the scene have now completely converged. Oh, look. There appears to be, looks like, I don't know how to identify that properly. Cow trucks. Cow trucks. Yeah. So yes, obviously, an escalation of the tension here, an escalation of the non-lethal weapons in the area, and we have pulled quite far back, as have at least a couple dozen, if not a couple hundred protesters on this side of the scene. Now,
yeah, I saw somebody just on the right on this camera pouring sort of water into their eyes, which if it's pepper, it could help. It often doesn't, because the idea of pepper spray and tear gas is that they stick around for a while. We're seeing it blow. What we do know, Alex, you probably have this information. We're going to hear from the mayor within the hour, probably in about 40 minutes or so. All the officials are saying that this was an officer or an officer-involved, federal agent-involved shooting, and the chief of police has said that the person who was shot has died. Are you getting that information on the ground?
That's what I've heard from my sources, but of course we have not fully 100% confirmed that ourselves. What's also interesting is that the commander of the Border Patrol, Greg Bavino, and Marcos Charles, one of the leaders of ICE, were slated to have given a press conference at 11 local.
It's almost
should be coming up.
Yeah, it's 6 minutes away. Yeah.
Yeah. So that should be coming up any moment now. If that press conference is still on, given this recent development, they are sure to either address or be asked a question about this developing situation. But what I will say is what you have heard matches what my sources, which are ICE observers, which are people who are doing the very same work that Renee Nicola Good was doing when she lost her life, have told me for hours now. But of course, we need to wait for the official confirmation.
Let me ask you this, and again, Alex, again, I know the situation you're in, so there may be questions I have that you don't have answers to, and that's entirely okay. Do we know, was this the work of ICE observer? Were they already there for something, or is this crowd that's gathered around you there in response to the fact that there was a shooting, or do you not know?
So this is in response to not necessarily just a shooting, but also whenever there's a raid. So as you know, there's Signal group chats, there's WhatsApp group chats. This community is mobilized so that whenever there's word that ICE is in the area, people head to the scene to try to blow whistles, to honk horns, to keep undocumented community members safe, community members of color who are worried about getting racially profiled safe. But then what happens is when there's word that gunfire has erupted at the scene, more and more people arrive to voice their displeasure, their frustration, and their anger, quite frankly, with the Trump administration, who has basically laid siege on the state of Minnesota for 6-7 weeks now. It has federal agents, and now fatal shooting here in Minneapolis. Allie?
Alex, give me a situation.
A pirate flag and the continuing of the banging of the dumpster trucks as people here want to send the message to the federal agents, ICE out of our city. That is the chant probably that I've heard the most. ICE out, ICE out. And I suspect we'll be hearing a lot more of those chants. Good afternoon, Allie.
Yeah, and I want to bring our viewers up to speed with what we are hearing from city and state officials. First of all, at 12:40 Eastern, 40 minutes from now, we are going to hear. We got another situation here. Let's just listen in for a moment. No! Fuck you!
Damn, he said he's 70 years old.
What a scene in an American city in 2026 in Minneapolis. We have confirmation now from the governor, I'm sorry, from the chief of the Minneapolis Police Department to the Minneapolis Star-Tribune that
there's a guy protesting, he's 70 years old.
Agents has died. This will now be the second shooting death by federal agents. We had a lot of responses from various people. I want to stay very close to this scene. I'm going to tell you all what's happened. To those of you who are joining, I'm going to tell you what the scene is. We are around Nicollet and East 26th in Minneapolis, in which there has been another shooting that has resulted in a death. Moments ago, the Minneapolis police chief, as I said, Brian O'Hara, we've seen him probably a few times in the last few weeks, he did tell the Minneapolis Star-Tribune that the man who was shot by federal officers has died. I'll show you the video, unfortunately, of this in a few moments. A crowd has gathered around the site of the shooting, which is it's the 26th Street West and Nicollet Avenue. I said East, I meant West. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry said he'll hold a briefing about 40 minutes from now, 30 minutes from now. We will, of course, bring you that. We have video of the shooting. Now, this is all hard to watch. This is unbelievable that this is an American city in 2026, and this is federal agents versus the residents of that city. I'm going to show you this video.
Hello, Malachi.
I normally say don't look away because you can't look away in moments like this. I have to tell you, this is really graphic. It's hard to tell what exactly is happening in the video, We don't know what happened leading up to it. I'm going to hold off on that video for a second.
Snowstorm, ice storm, the weather gonna hit. It already hit.
I'm gonna
be careful out there.
We now have protesters coming up closer to these federal officers. But for a moment, let me just, again, I'm going to warn you, this is really, really graphic. Here's the video that seems to be the precipitating event of all of this.
They're doing too much, man, and they keep pushing people, you know?
Don't fight back. The dude was fighting back or something.
I counted 5 shots that I heard, but again, we don't know, and we're not forensicists, and there's stuff we may not have seen on that video. We don't know why this person was shot, but they are dead. Joining me now is Rob D'Amico. He's MS Now's national security and law enforcement analyst, and Tom Major.
There was another guy that took off running, looked like he would, like he didn't.
Being here, and again, you all know better than I do that we cannot make determinations based on one piece of video. But not what we're looking at right now, but the video that I just showed the viewers. Rob, let me start with you. What were you able to see through your experienced eyes?
Well, when your folks first sent it to me, I actually thought it was AI because it was so bad. I mean, that's my initial reaction. Was the restraint training's awful. When you have a person that's down, that's trying to resist getting handcuffed, you have to control the limbs, the hands being the most important and the most dangerous. You have one guy just kind of like throwing punches in there, which doesn't do that. When you have multiple people on one person, you get one person on each arm, and then you have someone sitting on the feet or controlling the feet so they don't kick someone, and then someone is designated to be on the handcuffs to get a handcuff on one arm to force it to the other one. I was trying to look at the victim in this point. When he's on the ground, I'm trying to see what his hands are doing because that's the most important thing. And at one point, he's on all fours, so you can see his hands. From what I could see, there was no weapon in him. Now, when he goes down and people get on top of him, what I don't understand is what did he do with his hands? His hands went into his belly area, and someone thought maybe he was going for a gun. That could force deadly force. But also, before that even happened, I saw one officer that had his weapon out. And I've been in numerous arrests like this where someone's resisting to get handcuffed. If they don't have a weapon, I absolutely do not draw my weapon. Like, you put it in a safe spot, and when you go into the person, you make sure that your weapon in its holster is facing away from them. And that's where all the training comes in. We train like that in FBI Academy all the time of people that aren't armed that you're trying to handcuff that are resisting. It can be tough, but you do have to go through that. You have to really control, again, the arms first, the legs second. You designate someone to be on handcuffs to get that handcuff on one.
That's a lot of tear gas.
Or if you have flex cuffs. But some of the tactics that I was seeing were just horrific, where I thought the video was fake. And then when the gunshots rang out, I could not determine from that group who shot first. I saw after it looked like 2 agents were shooting into actually a victim that wasn't even moving on the ground. So I think when people see this, as you said, it's actually more, it's worse than the shooting before, in my eyes. But again, until we start understanding what happened before, what was he wanted for, what was he being detained for, and then when he was on the ground, what were his hands doing? Did someone think he was going for a gun in his clothing or something like that? Really is going to determine how this looks. But again, I think when this hits the regular media, the protests that you see will actually intensify.
Tom, so DHS, we're getting very little information all around, but DHS says, and this is important based on what we were just talking about. I just want to hold for a second and see what's going on here. We got a lot of photographers and a lot of ICE officials. All right, they're retreating now. The officials seem to have moved forward. The officers now they're going back to their original position. Tom, the DHS says the man who was shot, who we now know has died, was armed. So let's pick up the narrative from what Rob was saying. We see this video. if you take DHS's word that he was armed, help me make sense of what you saw in the video.
So whenever you are in close quarters like that, the officers are trained to put a high priority on weapon retention. When you are wrestling with someone, you not only have to try and get them under control, you have to make sure that you're in control of your weapon at all times. Most holsters nowadays are constructed so that it's very difficult to pull a weapon out of someone's holster. You usually have to make a couple of movements to get it out. In the old days, when Rob and I started, I mean, you had it was much easier. You had it was snapped in, and you could pull the gun right out. So weapon retention, making sure you always have control of your weapon, even when you are in close quarters with wrestling with someone, tremendously important. So there's two things here. Either this individual may have had a weapon concealed on their person, and as the ICE folks were wrestling with him, again, they would try to keep control of his hands so that he couldn't put his hands in his pockets or anywhere where there might be a weapon. That if you can control the hands, that's one of the most important things when you're wrestling with someone, trying to get them into custody. Or there's always the possibility that, and this has happened so many times where it's ended up involved in an officer-involved shooting, where an individual is going for an officer's weapon. They've got their hand on the weapon, they're pulling it, trying to pull it out of the holster, and there you have what can be a deadly force situation, because if the individual gets it out and starts shooting, that's obviously too late. You can't allow that individual to get possession of a weapon. And looking at that video, we don't know what that was in that individual's hands. We don't know if they were able to get a weapon from one of the officers. It didn't appear, but it's too tough to tell. It was too far away, and there were too many people blocking what the suspect was doing. So this is one of those situations that, unfortunately, ICE has in past cases has given out information that was inaccurate. So we hope that whatever they say is actually accurate and factual. But at this point, it's tough for anybody outside of the officers involved to know really what happened.
Yeah, we're gonna try and break that video down for you. We're looking at it, but again, this is not a forensic examination, right? We can only see what we can see, and both of you are pointing out that there may be things we can't see. What we do know, though, and Rob, we have had this. We've had the political folks in there saying, meaning the two senators, the governor, and now the governor of Illinois, where they've got ICE, ICE and DHS presence there, all saying that a situation which is supposed to be immigration enforcement isn't supposed to end up like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough to understand what was going on beforehand. And as Tom talked about, the lead up to this is important in the facts of what's going on.
And just to be very clear and very transparent, we don't have any video about the lead up to it. We don't know. We only saw the video of the scuffle on the sidewalk. We don't know what led up to it. So I just want to underscore that. We don't know, so we don't know.
Yeah. So one important thing is the video is from inside, so you can't hear what the ICE officers are saying, because I would like to see an outside video. Because normally when you're in a fight like that, you're trying to restrain someone, you do have someone standing off with the weapon just in case a weapon gets involved, but you don't want them close to the scene so that the person who's fighting can get a hold of that. But what you normally hear is, as soon as you're doing in that crumb of people, if someone sees the subject have a gun, they will yell gun, and that alerts everybody, because you're not yelling a gun for obviously a law enforcement agent having one. But if someone sees that the subject has a weapon, they're going to yell gun. And that may have been yelled. Again, we're watching a video from inside, so you couldn't hear some of the commands or what was going on between the ICE agents and the subject. But it becomes a point where if they see a gun and yell a gun, that tells everyone to back away, and the person that is on, covering down on the subject with a gun may engage them. It was so hard to see. And I really
CNN says he was armed.
I put it on slow-mo. I tried to slow it down to hear that first
So he
shot
had a
come
gun.
out,
I
and
don't
I
know.
could not see the ICE agent, any of the ICE agents around him, in a position to take the shot when the sound came out. Again, you couldn't see all of them. And then you could see that the ICE agents were absolutely surprised when the round went off, because the ones closest to it kind of jumped back and had some facial reactions that they didn't understand what was going on either. And then you saw two agents that were standing back, drawn and firing into the subject. So it is really tough to tell. If there's more video that comes out, I think if it's on the street, you're going to start hearing the interaction between the subject and the law enforcement agents, and that may give more information what was going on between them, especially if you hear gun. If you hear gun being yelled, that's normally the subject of the arrest somehow has a weapon. It could have been obviously an ICE agent. If it was, as Tom talked about, the holsters now are made so that if you're not drawing perfectly from where the person wearing the gun drawing it, it's really hard to get the gun out. But if the gun's out, obviously the subject can get that too. So I think we're going to need a lot more information. I think they really have to document this. If this in fact was the case that the subject of arrest had a weapon and fired the weapon, I think because of what Tom talked about on certain things not coming true that were put out, that they really need to document that and show that to the public and say, here is the evidence that we're seeing right now that shows it. But I hopefully, we don't have everyone jump into a conclusion without an investigation going on like happened on the last one.
Yeah, and that's, I just keep wanting to underscore this. What we do know is that there's been another person who has been shot by federal people in Minneapolis, but that's the only piece of information we actually know at the moment. The other part of this is what you're looking at now is an ongoing confrontation between protesters and the federal agents. Alex Tabbitt is there. He's not in the same location as exactly. He's a few blocks away because that's just the nature of how they close off the areas where these things happen. He's where there are more protesters, but you can see the tear gas. At moments you see the screen go completely white. That's tear gas. Earlier you didn't see the federal officers wearing their gas masks. You saw them wearing the masks that they always wear. Then you saw them wearing gas masks. In many cases, we saw them with pepper spray in their hands, but then we saw guns that can either be used. Some of the guns are pepper guns, and some of them are tear gas guns. We also see flashbang grenades that are going on, and there's a constant skirmish now going on. You can see somebody here who seems to be handcuffed, who's being walked by these federal agents. Again, this is a very hard situation to get context in. We know someone's been shot and killed by federal officers. We know that tensions are very high between people in Minneapolis and the federal government and the CBP and ICE officers who are on the ground. We do know that the only way you can sort of tell CBP and ICE officers these days is by virtue of the fact that they don't tend to wear a lot of identifying stuff on them. They do have, in many cases, vests that say police. It's important to distinguish that they're not trained as police. They're not trained in crowd control. Sadly, Minneapolis police and Minnesota State Police have learned a lot more about crowd control in the last 4 or 5 years. Tom, I just want to ask you, because as the former chief of the Capitol Police, your people are trained in crowd control, and you are trained in what you do if let me just see what's going on here. Somebody else is being handcuffed by these federal officers. All right, we don't know what that is. Tom, just tell me about that, because I think it's pretty clear to everybody that the federal officers are not good at the crowd control thing. But when you as Capitol Police Chief, you had to deal with the idea that someone might be there, might be armed, might need to be restrained. What does protocol dictate?
So we usually had warning ahead of time or some notification ahead of time that we were going to have a large protest that had the possibility for violence. And so just the way we set it up, I mean, the ICE agents here are putting yellow tape, tying it from tree to tree or to a car to block off protesters. And it really isn't a barrier that is helping the law enforcement or ICE maintain control of a scene. And so, and then you also have to have enough people there so that you can deter the crowd from trying to, interfere with the scene. And I think this is what, the best I can determine, this is what ICE is trying to do. They've got a shooting scene, which is now a crime scene, that has to be investigated, has to be processed, that have to have forensic evidence. It takes hours to do that, to collect evidence. You don't want anything to interfere with that. So they've got to keep these folks away. And it just seems like there doesn't seem to be enough ICE agents there, because there are thousands of protests. There were thousands yesterday that were in Minneapolis. I think there are probably just more and more people who are showing up, and it's getting more and more challenging for them to keep control of that crowd. The other thing is that once you lose your legitimacy with the public, once the public thinks you're not fair, you're not playing by the rules, you're not, policing in our best interest, that sets up a situation where the crowd is angry at you. The good news when I was with the Capitol Police, we typically were at demonstrations that had to do with the war in Gaza, abortion, immigration, things that really got folks stirred up. When the protesters showed up, the Capitol Police weren't the enemy. Right. So the way we treated them and the way we dealt with them typically did not escalate the situation. Here we have something that has continued to escalate over the past several weeks, and it's not going to get any better. And this is where you've got this test of wills, this war of wills between thousands of members of the public who are demonstrating against what ICE is trying to do. The administration keeps sending more and more ICE agents in. It's just going to escalate. At some point, someone is going to have to make the decision that we've got to de-escalate this. We've got to tamp it down. We've got to stop for a minute. Pause.
Tom, let me stop you for 1 second. I want to go to Alex Tabbitt. There is a fire burning now in the background. Alex, what do you got there?
That's absolutely right, Adam. That's where we just were, down the block, where we saw those protesters set up that barricade. Now we're seeing plumes and plumes of dark smoke. Colin, if you can zoom in there so that the viewers at home can see, it looks like the demonstrators have set up some sort of a fire, although we are not there, so we cannot see exactly who lit the fire, but that would be our assumption given that's where we just were. And over here, Cully, if you don't mind zooming in over there, you can see what appears to be the federal agents in a standoff with the protesters. Those are different than the agent or the state troopers that we believe to have been seeing a block away. This looks like federal agents. We're all wearing gas masks in case this situation intensifies. Alan?
Yeah, you saw earlier, you were showing us the shots of police who were uniformed, had badges, had identifying badges on them. And so unfortunately, that's the way you can now distinguish whether someone's Minneapolis State Police, Minnesota State Police or Minneapolis Police versus the federal officers. We're going to keep a close eye on that. Alice, we're going to come back to you in a few moments. We're going to take a quick break. We're expecting to hear from the mayor of Minneapolis very shortly, Jacob Fry. We're going to stay very, very close to the situation. We do have comments from all of the elected officials about what's going on. DHS, by the way, did say that the person who was shot, who we do know has died, was armed. Now, we don't know what that means. Again, we don't have enough detail. We don't know whether it was their gun that they had on them or whether they got one of the guns of the ICE officers. We don't know. I want to just keep underscoring, we don't know what we don't know. We can only see what we can see. We're going to try and break down that video as much as we can to find out what happened. We've got this live video. We've got Alex Tabbitt on the scene, and we've got a number of experts with us. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with this continuing breaking news situation in Minneapolis, where another person has been shot by federal agents and has died.
Go make your community better!
When you live with diabetes, progress is having your coffee like you like it.
There goes those flashbangs again. It sounded like in the last couple of days this was starting to quiet down just a little, but now This has definitely fired things back up, and you see protesters there on the screen very angry. They're filming those federal agents. This is about -9 degrees in Minneapolis right now, and the weather is not impacting the situation at all. Giant crowd, hundreds of people out there. We don't know if they were there when the shooting happened. We don't know the events that led up to the shooting. We're still waiting to get more information from Homeland Security, ICE. There is going to be a press conference happening in the next hour. We should hopefully hear more. Let's listen in here to this protester.
In God's image, in Jesus' image, we welcome the stranger. Go home.
Okay.
Go.
Saying go home. They are telling ICE to go home. This has been the battle cry of these protesters in Minneapolis even before the Renee Good shooting, and then it just skyrocketed after, and it has been heightened now again. This is a powder keg situation right now, and we don't know if local law enforcement have control of the situation. And we are watching these images live along with you, and it looks intense. You've got Border Patrol on the ground, ICE agents on the ground, and now we're told, Garrett Teddy telling us that state police have been sent in, as well as other local law enforcement, to try to keep things calm on the scene. Garrett, what are you seeing now where you're standing?
Yeah, Aisha, it looks like a bunch of the crowd is moving to some other location. They may be going to one of these other intersections where protesters have already been pushed back by state police as well as federal law enforcement. And going back to what you were talking about the past few days, it seems like things have kind of been somewhat calming down in the area. That's a point that both Mayor Jacob Fry and Governor Tim Walz have pointed to, is how the protests have been peaceful and how proud they were of Minnesota to show, well, this is how we do things. Going back to the Insurrection Act, you mentioned just a couple of days ago, so we're hearing some more flashbangs going off now. The Insurrection Act, just a couple of days ago, when Vice President J.D. Vance was about that, and he said he didn't feel like it had gotten to that point where that was necessary. President Trump said the same thing earlier this week. Depending on how things go over the next few days, the calculus could change. We know that the state National Guard has been on standby to step in if things did get out of control. That hasn't happened yet at this point, but we also know that the U.S. Airborne has multiple battalions that have been told to be on standby in case they needed to be deployed to come out here to Minneapolis if things did under control. So there are a lot of resources that are in the wings waiting to come in if things do get out of control, because as we've talked about, there's only 600 police officers in the Minneapolis Police Department. More than 3,000 federal agents are here on the ground already, though. So any forces that would be coming in would just be to supplement that enormous force that is already here.
We're waiting to see if the president responds to what we're watching together live on the scene. Just absolute chaos on the streets of Minneapolis after a deadly shooting of a 51-year-old man. We don't know what led to that shooting. We know he was shot by a federal law enforcement agent. This is, of course, in the midst of protesters on the streets trying to push ICE out, yelling and screaming, disrupting their activities on the ground, trying to get them to leave the state of Minnesota. I'm waiting to see if the president has a response on Truth Social, but the governor of Illinois is also watching as well. He just posted on X. This is Governor J.B. Pritzker writing, "I am asking my fellow Republican and Democratic governors across the nation to have a unified response." He says, "We must all stand against the lawlessness being inflicted in our state." So that is from the Democrat governor from Illinois. A very similar tone coming from the Democrat governor of Minnesota, Jonathan Fahey. If you are still on the line with me, I mean, this is going to be used by every Democrat right now. They were already creating this narrative that, kids were being sent into detention camps. We saw that earlier this week. They were trying to get into these ICE facilities, saying that they were barbaric. I think that's what Senator Chris Murphy said. They're on their way back to Washington next week, and they're going to try to block this Homeland Security funding that includes ICE funding, FEMA funding. Where do you see this going the next 24 hours? I mean, really just the next hours here.
Well, I do think, when you have people like J.B. Pritzker chiming in, which just seems so wholly irresponsible when, it's not even his state. And a lot of these Democrats are using this, like you said, to sort of jockey for position within the party and trying to make statements. But he's talking about the lawlessness, implying that the person that was shot wasn't acting lawlessly and the agent somehow was. And he doesn't even know what the facts are, and they haven't come out yet. But we do know there's been a lot of lawlessness, fighting against ICE, obstructing against ICE, and he never speaks out against that. And I think the most helpful thing, and we're not going to hear from J.B. Pritzker, but hopefully others will say, whether or not you agree with President Trump on immigration policy, immigration law is what it is, and his responsibility is to ensure it's enforced. And we have mechanisms for changing the law, and they're called elections and legislation and things like that. It's not obstruction. But I hope things do calm down quickly.
Jonathan, I'm just getting an update now from DHS, and this is where they're at right now. Again, we're waiting for a press conference from not just DHS and Border Patrol, but also from Mayor Fry. That's coming up here in the next couple of minutes. But this is a statement from the Department of Homeland Security. They say at 9:05 a.m. Central, so that's 10:05 Eastern, DHS law enforcement officers were conducting a targeted operation in Minneapolis against an illegal alien wanted for violent assault. An individual then approached a U.S. Border Patrol officer with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. And we have that image, if we can put it up on the screen for our viewers to see. This is the image shared with us by DHS. So they say a man approached their U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The officers then attempted to disarm the suspect, but the armed suspect violently resisted. More details on the armed struggle are forthcoming. So I'm imagining they're reviewing whatever footage they have of this, the sequence of this event. Okay, so the statement goes on to say, this is again from Homeland Security, fearing for his life and the lives and safety of fellow officers, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics on scene immediately delivered medical aid to that subject, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 magazines, no identification. This looks like a situation where an individual wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. Again, this is from Homeland Security. They also add that about 200 rioters arrived at the scene and began to obstruct and assault law enforcement on the scene. Crowd control measures were deployed for the safety of the public and law enforcement, and the situation is evolving. And that is what we're watching now, is the aftermath. You can hear those flashbangs going off as protesters continue to taunt those federal law enforcement agents that are on the ground. State police has also now been sent in by the governor's office, but the governor is calling on the president to basically take ICE out of his state. They're declaring that an unlawful assembly. I want to bring in Governor Tate Reeves of the great state of Mississippi. And Governor, we were supposed to have you on to talk about this snowstorm that is hitting your state right now. But I want to ask you about what you're watching on TV with us. This is incredible pictures from Minneapolis. Just absolute sheer chaos. I can't tell who is in control of the situation. If you were the governor of this state right now, if this was happening in Mississippi, what would you do?
Well, thanks for having me on. And I will tell you that it is imperative that in a situation like this, because look, many of these protesters, what they want is chaos. It is incredibly important that the leaders of the city, the leaders of the state, include and involve city police, state police, and federal law enforcement to maintain law and order. It seems very clear that there was an individual who went up to a law enforcement officer with a weapon, which presumably was loaded. And it doesn't matter if you're in Minneapolis, Minnesota, or Mississippi, it is a bad idea to approach law enforcement in such a manner. And so I think that to get control of the city, to ensure that we have law and order, the mayor and the governor need to step up and lead. They need to support law enforcement that is simply trying to enforce our federal laws. And regardless of what protesters want the federal laws to be, the previous administration allowed 10 million illegal aliens into our country, many of them obviously criminal, and continuing to create criminal acts. And you're going to get arrested for that in America, and you should. And so to watch this scene with individuals flying American flags upside down, it's really hard to watch. And I know there are a lot of people across America that are praying for our law enforcement officers there in Minneapolis and across the country right now.
You know, what they're trying to do right now is basically secure the scene. I mean, we've got a deadly shooting here. We have to have an investigation. And you've got protesters screaming on the ground in front of us, emotional, throwing trash cans, barricading roads. I mean, really trying to disrupt really lawful activity that's going on. I wonder, you know, we're watching some of these state police officers who are clearly, I mean, they're sent there to try to make sure that people don't cross the boundaries of this.
What a scene, Minneapolis in 2026. David Rode, you were saying the difficulty in understanding what really happened is exacerbated by the fact that people don't necessarily believe what
we got some cold weather.
What this woman is saying.
What's your husband's name? Matthew James Obadiah Allen. Write that down. Matthew James, we're not going to let him get lost. It's going to be fine. Matthew James Obadiah Allen. Matthew James.
Man, I bet a lot of these immigrants that came over with Joe Biden, they felt like it's a setup and they self-deported. Like I heard 2 million of those migrants self-deported already.
What Tom Major was saying to us moments ago was that when he was the chief of the Capitol Police, there would be demonstrations about all sorts of things, whether it was abortion or Israel, Gaza, but the demonstrators didn't see the Capitol Police as being on the other side of it. And we have seen issues, including in Minneapolis, where the citizenry and the police were at odds with each other. But this is the complicating factor here. This isn't the public mad about something and the police in between. This is the public mad at these officers, these federal officers.
Correct, and it's the distrust of the federal government in the wake of the Renee Good shooting and killing. The key thing here is for public officials to try to bring down the temperature and make factual
I got hungry, y'all. I gotta eat.
What's known and what's not known. We've seen this over and over in shootings. I mean, the hours after Charlie Kirk was killed, you know, other incidents, and it's critical right now how these local officials respond, and to be frank, the Trump administration responds. And this is a moment for an independent investigation that I would suggest involves local law enforcement.
This is what the Hennepin County attorney is saying. We want to have a state response, but after the Renee Good killing, one of the first things we heard is the feds saying state has no role in this thing.
Correct. It was the feds. It was Vice President Vance. It was Secretary Noem from DHS. So you don't want a situation like this to spiral out of control. People are seeing these images, you know, on their televisions across the country and in Minneapolis. You don't want more people flooding into Minneapolis. You don't want more violence and injuries and God forbid, deaths. So, you know, we'll see what's happening with this poor woman and then see what the local officials have to say.
I'm trying to understand what it is she was talking about, because there was a name that she gave, and the man asked for a name. It looks like a clergyman next to her. By the way, there's been a lot of clergy in fact, there's a guy right behind him with a vest on that says chaplain. The clergy's been very, very involved. Interfaith, by the way, Christians, Jews, Muslims, they've been there this week, sort of standing with the people of Minneapolis. I'm very cautious to not use the word citizens anymore, because it's not actually about citizens. It's about everybody in Minneapolis. They are outraged in that city with the federal response. And I am a little, Rob D'Amico, I have to ask you this. Minneapolis was ground zero for a lot of the stuff that happened in the last several years with the Black Lives Matter protests. And sometimes they handled it well, and sometimes they didn't handle it well. But this is not the remit of federal officers. So I'm kind of curious as I look at my screen to understand, why is a standoff continuing between federal officers and people in Minneapolis? Why are these federal officers not out of the scene, letting MPD or Minneapolis or Minnesota State Police handle this?
I don't know the exact specifics. I do know, like, around the shooting, it's a crime scene now that they have to protect it. They have to protect it in order to come in and have whatever federal agency, last time was FBI, to do the initial investigation there, that they have to hold down. But I would normally see, like you said, where the local police come in and take over the protester type of thing. And as Chief Tom said, it's a big difference when the protesters are mad at the people who are actually now around the protesters. And that is a big difference, because like Capitol Police, they seem as a neutral party, just trying to hold the line and the law enforcement part of it, but they're not mad at them. And this is more inflammatory when the protesters are mad at the ones that are trying to control the crowds, and the fact they don't have crowd control training. I mean, normally when you see like police, like when you were showing earlier and how they were deploying the tear gas, and then all of a sudden you saw a live, a bullet weapon, we'll call it, that was amongst that. Normally when you see like police and anti-protest gear, the first wave has all the glass shields to protect them and the helmets on and all the appropriate things. You don't see live weapons out. You may see them back further in case someone does bring a weapon out that's needed, but they're not on that front line. There's not a mix between it. It's one thing, to have those people in amongst themselves, but they don't have the training for it. It's one of those things that FBI agents aren't trained in crowd control, ICE and other federal agents aren't, and there are ways to do it. NYPD is a great one. LAPD knows how to do it, and they go through training probably on a monthly basis, and they're used to getting things thrown at them and spit at and all these other things, and they understand that if they remain calm, it actually helps others to remain calm, and they have to do it that way. And then when they do have to arrest people, you'll see how they do it. They surround them, and then they protect the outer barrier with those glass shields again, in order to get that person restrained and handcuffed and out, because they also don't want the visual of that happening that incites other people. That it's all part of a lot of training, and to be able to think you can do this without that training, I think is bad. And we're watching.
We're watching this, and we've watched it, over 50 years. You guys have both seen where it works and where it doesn't work, and escalation virtually never works, and de-escalation is complicated. But that's why we train. Now, so we're watching this going on again. There's people throwing things in both directions. We now have, okay, there we go. We got the ICE officials running after somebody or something. Tom Major, we watched the video. I don't want to be gratuitous about continuing to show it. We are trying to deconstruct it and understand it, which you have done and Rob D'Amico have done. But again, it's one angle. As Rob points out, it seems to be from across the road and indoors, so you're not hearing everything, but you do hear gunfire. I thought I counted 5 gunshots. I don't know, and again, I'm not an expert at this. That said, DHS said that the person who was shot was armed. Again, we don't have detail as to whether they had a gun or they took someone's gun. You guys both discussed that. We also don't know the gunshots we heard. We have no idea of who fired what at whom. Would you agree with that?
All of that. In fact, we don't even know what kind of weapon it is. They say that the individual had a weapon. It could be a knife, could be a gun. We don't even know what kind of weapon that they're referring to. So this is, there's so many things that we don't know about this. But I have to go back to what Rob was talking about earlier, and that is watching the tactics and how ICE is handling these demonstrations. And it goes back to a question, Ali, that you had earlier. Where's MPD? Where's the state police? Why aren't they assisting? I'll tell you, I haven't spoken to Chief O'Hara. MPD is not there because they don't have the people. They are woefully understaffed. There are about 300 officers under the staffing where they should be. And so when things like this happen, It's very difficult for them to deploy, 100 officers or more to try
Some of them
and
protesters getting
become
arrested.
a barrier between the crowd and what the crowd is upset about. In this case, it's certainly about the shooting. It's certainly about it, but it's about ICE as well. So ICE is almost forced to do this on their own. I've heard other reports where ICE is upset that they're not getting more help from local police and from the state police, but there have been discussions, and they should know what the local police, what their capacity is to help, because they've been told what their capacity is to help in these situations. And this is where, the discussion about, well, ICE, what are you going to do? What, what operations are you going to try and perform? And this is where you got to find the balance so that ICE is not out there on their own. And when something blows up like this, when it turns into this kind of chaos, you can't then say, oh, wait, Minneapolis, you need to help us. Minneapolis doesn't have the capacity.
To be clear, there is something more than 5 times the size of Minneapolis police in federal agents in Minnesota right now. So you're right; they're not even close to being having that. Again, we're looking at weaponry here. These are generally speaking, the weapons that you're seeing are the kinds of things that you fire pepper balls or tear gas out of. There is some live weaponry. We did see earlier one of the officers taking a handgun out. I do have a statement. I have a number of new statements that I need to read to you before we hear from the mayor of Minneapolis, who's expected to speak within the next 5 minutes. DHS has now put out a statement. Let me read this to you. David Durrett, I want you to just listen to this with me because there's a lot of detail in here. At 9:05 a.m. Central Time, as DHS law enforcement officers were conducting a targeted operation in Minneapolis against an illegal alien wanted for violent assault, an individual approached U.S. Border Patrol with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun seen here. The officers attempted to disarm the suspect, but the armed suspect violently resisted. More details on the armed struggle are forthcoming. Fearing for his life and the lives and safety of fellow officers, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics on scene immediately delivered medical aid to the subject, but the subject was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 magazines and no ID. This looks like a situation where an individual wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. About 200 rioters arrived at the scene and began to obstruct and assault law enforcement on the scene. Crowd control measures were deployed for the safety of the public and law enforcement. The situation is evolving and more information is forthcoming. Hold your thought on that for a second. We have a comment from Border Patrol that says Border Patrol agents are trained extremely well to protect themselves, their fellow agents, and innocent third parties. When a supposed peaceful protester brings a weapon, such as a loaded handgun, and brandishes it, there are going to be severe consequences and repercussions. We have pleaded with and warned the media and the politicians that their irresponsible, hate-filled, and false rhetoric is going to get people unnecessarily hurt or worse, killed when they portray our agents and officers as the aggressors. They've encouraged these reckless confrontations and attacks on our agents and officers who are performing their lawful duties and enforcing the laws that Congress has put on the books. The fake and dishonest media and the shameless politicians should be held accountable for willfully misleading the public and enticing these protesters and agitators. We have full confidence that when more facts are revealed, our agents and officers will be shown to have utilized justifiable force in eliminating the threat. So much for bringing the temperature down.
Correct. I mean, this is partisanship versus public service, and it's so important for public officials at moments like this to not use adjectives like massacre and fake news and this kind of thing. So it's surprising to hear that kind of language. The officers who may have feared for their lives, this individual, all of that could be true.
All of that could be true.
That could be absolutely true.
There could have been somebody with a gun.
And all of the officers around the individual who died should have been wearing body cameras. Release that body camera footage. Be transparent. Let the public decide what happened here. And again, if he was armed and if he refused to, when a law enforcement confrontation happens and an individual is armed, if that individual resists, the shootings are often, I want to say often, we don't know for sure here, justified. But release the body cam videos, bring down the temperatures, promise a thorough and fair investigation with state and local officials. There's a different tone that can be adopted. Again, the last thing we want is more violence, more injuries, and more deaths.
Rob D'Amico, to the conversation that Tom and I were just having a moment ago, Amy Klobuchar has put out a statement saying, Donald Trump and your lieutenants who ordered this ICE surge, watch the horrific video of the killing today. The world is watching. Thousands of citizens stopped and harassed. This is the important part to what we were saying. Local police are no longer able to do their work. Kids hiding, schools closed. Get ICE out of Minnesota now. Republicans in Congress, stop your silence and stop being complicit. So Tom was mentioning the fact that in Minneapolis, Minnesota don't have the resources to handle what ICE is doing, but it's also a different relationship that Minnesotans have with their police. They may not love them, but they have a different relationship with them than they've got with these ICE officers. So when you have a complete breakdown of trust, this makes all of this more complicated than it otherwise would be.
Absolutely. You saw in the last shooting when they didn't even let the ambulance into the scene to get close enough to this good. And I just didn't understand that. Why would you not let an ambulance in? Obviously, there's no prior coordination. We had arrests in the FBI, which we couldn't tell the locals about. If we were arresting a spy that was a classified case, we still had an agent at the nearest EMT station that if something went wrong, that they could grab them and get them to the scene right away. I mean, we took extra precautions if that was something that we couldn't do. And what you're seeing now is also you saw complaints by the local police that some of their law enforcement officers are actually getting harassed by ICE. So there's a lot of tension between the two. But I think the police would be professional enough if they were asked to come in and help quell these protests. I think they would do it professionally. You have to, ICE is the gas that's lighting this fire. So if you get them out of this area and you get the police in, I think the protests would actually diminish it quite a bit. And Tom, you just read the statement.
Yeah, go ahead.
I do want to make a comment on the statement that was released by ICE with this person with the gun. And it may be, obviously, that they're showing a picture of the gun, they're showing a picture of the magazine. But what I saw in that statement is if you have these ICE officers that are standing around and an individual comes up to him with a weapon drawn, I think he's going to get shot right there. I would. Like if someone came up to me and I'm doing a law enforcement operation and he has a weapon drawn, I'm not going to get into a physical fight with him. I'm probably going to shoot him because he's bringing a gun right up there. So that part of that statement kind of doesn't make sense to me. Now, he could have had it, again, in his clothing or something. They're putting it out there. But that part of the statement to me was a bit confusing because if you see these ICE agents or Border Patrol that were standing around, all of them armed, all of them in tactical gear, and someone comes out with them with a gun already pointed at them, I think that it's going to be a gunfight at that particular moment and not an altercation that we saw. So, again, and the problem goes back to they've said things before that turned out not to be true. And that's what the difference is nowadays. Right. When you can't take what they're saying as the honest truth. And there's
right. And only because we have video do we know some of these things not to be true. Yeah. Tom, I will say... Go ahead, Rob.
Tom said, body cameras are great. Police all the time complained at first. But after they started wearing them, they started figuring out body cameras prove what they were saying in court and on tickets and on everything else. It comes out to, if you're a good cop, you want a body cam.
Yeah. Tom, I've had critical things to say about MPD in the past, but I will say this. They had worked hard to try and regain the trust of the community. Part of the problem here is whether or not they have the resources to help ICE out with crowd control and things like that. There's a piece of me that wonders, they don't want this fight. They don't want to be associated with ICE and the federal officers in this thing. They've worked hard to get the trust of their community back. This is kind of only bad for them to be associated with this.
You know, having spoke with Chief O'Hara, I can tell you that in his heart, he wants to support any law enforcement agency that is in Minneapolis. But he is being put in a very difficult position. As much as he would want to help any agency, when you've got an agency in here that is escalating things day after day, week after week, to situations like this, and this is not going to end. I mean, we saw the number of protesters there yesterday, thousands of them. It's going to be the same today. It's going to be the same tomorrow, even with the weather that's coming through. People show up in Minneapolis. And so he is in a very difficult position, wanting to support them, but I think I won't speak for him, but I would say if I was in his position, and I have been in his position in many situations, I would want to go to ICE and say, look, can we pause this? Can we pause just for a moment? I'm not telling you you got to leave. I'm not telling you can't do your job. But can we just pause this for a minute? Because we've got to take this down. It's gotten to a point where ICE can't seem to control the crowd. Minneapolis doesn't have the capacity to do it. The crowd is, so I think everybody, or many people in Minnesota, many people in Minneapolis want this to pause for just a moment. And let me just say one quick thing about the body-worn camera. I have, as the chief of 3 large departments, I've overseen dozens of officer-involved shootings. Many of them had body-worn camera footage. But I will caution you that people can look at the body-worn camera footage and see many different things. It's not going to be a consensus by the public or by the media or anybody. Oh, this is what happened. Sometimes it is just pretty clear cut. But so often people see what they want to see and think, gosh, why did they do this? Why did they have to do that? The body-worn camera, it helps and it's great. And I think every cop should be wearing a body-worn camera. But too often, it's not going to bring people together in terms of deciding, yes, this is what happened.
Part of the problem, David Rode, is that immigration enforcement is civil. And where there are altercations between police and the public, it's usually around something. But that's not. They're not trained to do the things that you think police in your community are supposed to do.
Correct. Like you.
Let me tell y'all something, man.
Sorry.
Folks in this country ain't never been richer. They ain't ever been more rich than they are.
On the screen,
And
the mayor.
so, I mean, it's going to go one way or another way. So,
Approximately 9:03 a.m. this morning, Minneapolis police received a report of a shooting involving 26th Street and Nicollet Avenue.
them people
on the
just,
south side of the city.
they just want to support the good people that are caught in between all this mess.
When they arrived, life-saving aid was being rendered, and he was transported.
But like always, the stuff gets out of hand, and bad people ruin it for the rest of us. So,
which is very limited. This is a 37-year-old white male who is a Minneapolis resident, and we believe he is an American citizen.
he was white.
We have not been told any official reports of what has led up to the shooting, but we have seen the video that is circulating in the area. We have an unlawful assembly at this time. Minneapolis police have given multiple warnings for the crowd to disperse. We are asking for people to avoid the area and to leave if you are there. We have requested mutual aid from the Minnesota State Patrol and from all our local and county regional partners. We ask everyone to remain calm and to please do not destroy our own city.
Yeah.
I just saw a video of more than 6 masked agents pummeling one of our constituents and shooting him to death. How many more residents, how many more Americans need to die or get badly hurt for this operation to end? How many more lives need to be lost before this administration realizes that a political and partisan narrative is not as important as American values? How many times must local and national leaders must plead with you, Donald Trump, to end this operation and recognize that this is not creating safety in our city? As you'll hear from Director Sayer in just a second, we have seen these kinds of operations in other places, in other countries, but not here in America. not in a way where a great American city is being invaded by its own federal government. I'm done being told that our community members are responsible for the vitriol in our streets. I'm done being told that our local elected officials are solely responsible for turning down the temperature. Just yesterday, we saw 15,000 people peacefully protesting in the streets, speaking out, standing up for their neighbors. Not a single broken window, not a single injury. Those peaceful protests embody the very principles that both Minneapolis and America was founded upon. Conversely, the mass militarized force and unidentified agents who are occupying our streets, that is what weakens our country. That is what erodes trust in both law enforcement and in democracy itself. So to everyone listening, stand with Minneapolis. Stand up for America. Recognize that your children will ask you what side you were on. Your grandchildren will ask you what you did to act to prevent this from happening again. To make sure that the foundational elements of our democracy were rock solid. What did you do to protect your city? What did you do to protect your nation? This is not what America is about. This is not a partisan issue. This is an American issue. This administration and everyone involved in this operation should be reflecting. They should be reflecting right now and asking themselves, what exactly are you accomplishing? If the goal was to achieve peace and safety, this is doing exactly the opposite. If the goal was to achieve calm and prosperity, this is doing exactly the opposite. Are you standing up for American families right now? Or are we tearing them apart? The invasion of these heavily armed masked agents roaming around on our streets of Minneapolis, emboldened with a sense of impunity, it has to end. This is not how it has to be. So, to President Trump, this is a moment to act like a leader. Put Minneapolis, put America first in this moment. Let's achieve peace. Let's end this operation, and I'm telling you, our city will come back. Safety will be restored. We're asking for you to take action now to remove these federal agents. Director Sayre.
My name is Rachel Sayre, and I am the Director of the Emergency Management Department for the City of Minneapolis. I took this job to keep us safe because I live here, and this is my community. We are doing everything we can to mitigate the impacts of this terrible situation. The city's Emergency Operations Center continues to be activated, as it has throughout the surge in federal agents over the last few weeks. We are tracking impacts and coordinating the city's response to this situation, which is having profound repercussions in our community. I can't underscore enough how much Operation Metro Surge is impacting our city. Families with loved ones detained and those who are afraid to be in public lest they become targets need help accessing the most basic necessities like food, housing, and rides to school. Businesses are shuttering and our local economy is severely impacted, which means families are suffering, just as we were rounding a corner in our recovery. Many of our Minneapolis residents, my neighbors, my friends, my community members, are ceasing participation in public life, afraid to even go to the doctor. In response, the city enterprise continues to utilize our entire emergency apparatus. That means staff across departments, often around the clock, are putting their regular jobs on hold in order to respond to the impacts of Metro Surge. I want everyone to know there are numerous resources available to community members right now. We have mental health help available. We have food assistance, housing and rental assistance, legal help. We are sharing information about what to do if you are exposed to tear gas, pepper spray, or other chemical agents. And the state AGs and ACLU are collecting reports of rights violations. You can access these resources on the city's virtual resource center at minneapolismn.gov/ICE. Please share this information with your neighbors. We have help and we want you to be able to access that. My background is in international humanitarian response in conflict zones in Yemen, Haiti, Syria, Iraq, and Ukraine. What I've seen here is what I've seen there. A powerful entity violently and intentionally terrorizing people, making them afraid to go outside so they can't earn a living, so that kids are forced out of school. This has a lasting generational impact. People can't plan a single day of their lives because they don't know who is around the corner and if their family member or neighbor is about to be taken away. In these times, you see both the best and the worst. The worst is the terror and the feeling of helplessness. The best will continue to be our community's response. The way we are showing up for each other, that is in the absolute worst of times. We're showing up for each other in the absolute worst of times. I'll turn it back to the mayor. Thank you.
We'll open it to questions.
We are seeing an incredible volatile situation unfolding right now on that scene. Is there any communication right now between the local federal law enforcement or cooperation? Where do those efforts stand to try to calm what's going on down there right now?
Yeah, I'll turn it to the chief to answer.
So the question was, there is an incredibly volatile scene in South Minneapolis right now, and the extent of communication with law enforcement agencies. We have established a command post that is led by Minneapolis Police, and there are representatives from all of the regional, local, county, and state organizations. We have had communication with Homeland Security, but they have not been able to provide us any specific details around the incident itself. We are responsible for ensuring the safety of people on the streets of our city, and we are doing everything that we can to maintain the peace right now, led by Minneapolis Police, but with the help of the Minnesota State Patrol, Hennepin and Ramsey County Sheriffs. Several suburban towns are in the city helping us with 911 calls. We have done an emergency recall of all sworn personnel back to duty. And we're working with the fire department right now to ensure that 2 small fires that were started in the area are safely extinguished. But again, we need everyone to avoid the area if possible. And the people who are in the area, we understand your frustrations. This is not sustainable. But we need people to leave the area at this time. We have communicated with the National Guard. They have been on standby for several days, and we have ensured the National Guard, as well as all of the local law enforcement partners, are aware of the situation.
Chief and Mayor, if I can ask you, this is a statement from Trisha McLaughlin, spokesperson for DHS. She said in her statement, an individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun, seen here, you showed a picture of it. The officers attempted to disarm the suspect, but the armed suspect violently resisted. More details on the armed struggle are forthcoming. Fearing for his life and the lives and safety of fellow officers, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics on the scene immediately delivered medical aid. Is that what happened?
So Minneapolis Police, the question had been cut out. As I stated, I immediately requested the BCA to respond.
Just said he was a 37-year-old white male to carry, and he only had a few traffic tickets.
That we were our office.
The top of the hour.
He had a bad day, y'all.
In New York City. Just want to let all of you know what we've been listening to. We've been press briefing by the Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara, Minneapolis Jacob Fry, and then Director
That
of
gun
Emergency
gets y'all in
Management
trouble
Rachel
sometimes,
Sayre.
man.
And they are trying to piece together what precisely happened shortly after 9 a.m. local time there in Minneapolis.